For 10 years, the truth stayed buried under concrete paperwork and lies. But the moment she was sworn in under oath, everything she'd hidden exploded. They never found a body. They never found a weapon. All they found was a wedding ring, sealed in concrete. And for a decade, that was all anyone had. Maple Ridge, Colorado wasn't the kind of place where murders happened. It was a kind of town where parents argued about property taxes, not police tape, where the biggest scandal in a year was a coach getting fired or a zoning dispute at City Hall. That's why October 12, 2001, felt so normal. Cool air, Friday night lights, neighbors gather for a block barbecue just off Pinecrest Avenue, plastic chairs, cheap speakers, kids racing bicycles in the street. Among them was Daniel Hargrove, 34 years old, civil engineer, the man people called when they needed help moving a couch or fixing a fence. Reliable, grounded, predictable. He arrived with his wife, Lauren Whitfield. To anyone watching, they look fine. But fine is often the last mask before everything breaks. Daniel barely ate. Lauren smiled too much. They stood close, but not comfortably. Their conversations were short, clipped, and private, heads tilted inward, voices lowered just enough to keep others out. Several neighbors would later describe the same unease. Something wasn't right. At 9:15 p.m., Daniel stepped away from the crowd. No announcement, no hug. He grabbed his jacket and told a neighbor he needed air. Lauren stayed. When someone asked where Daniel went, she shrugged. He just went for a drive, she said. No one questioned it. That was the last confirmed sighting of Daniel Hargrove. At 7:42 a.m. the next morning, Lauren called police. Daniel hadn't come home. She said this wasn't like him. Deputies found his pickup truck less than 5 miles away, behind an abandoned storage facility on the edge of town. It wasn't dumped. It wasn't rushed. It was parked carefully. The doors were unlocked. The keys were still in the ignition. His wallet sat untouched. His phone lay powered off on the passenger seat. There were no signs of a struggle. No blood, no broken glass, no footprints leading away. And then they noticed what wasn't there. Daniel's wedding ring. As police canvassed the area, uncomfortable details began to surface. One neighbor reported hearing raised voices near a commercial construction site Daniel supervised, less than a mile from a barbecue. Another mentioned a loud metallic sound sometime after midnight. Sharp, heavy, out of place. Like someone dropped a steel pipe, he said. Investigators searched the site. At first, they found nothing. Then, 3 days later, sunlight caught something unnatural in the concrete foundation scheduled to be sealed that week. Something reflective, something personal. Daniel's wedding ring, embedded just beneath the surface. Lauren was brought in for questioning. She cried, she trembled. She asked if Daniel was alive. She said they argued. She said he walked out. She said he needed space. She said the same thing again and again and again. No body meant no murder charge. No weapon meant no proof. The case stalled. Weeks turned into months, months into years. Eventually, Daniel Hargrove was no longer a headline, just a name in a file marked unresolved. Lauren sold the house, moved out of state, remarried. From the outside, it looked like survival. Daniel's family never stopped asking questions. His sister pushed for reinvestigation. Private investigators were hired, then let go. Tips came in, each one colder than the last. How does a man disappear without a trace? Why leave behind everything but a ring? And why was that ring sealed in concrete? For 10 years, there were no answers. Until paperwork reopened the grave everyone assumed was empty. In 2011, Daniel's family filed a wrongful death civil suit, not for closure. For truth, Lauren was subpoenaed. By then, technology had advanced. So had the patience of investigators who never believed the story fully added up. They reopened the case quietly. They re-examined timelines, compared statements, noticed subtle shifts. Minutes changed, details softened, language evolved. Nothing loud enough to accuse, but enough to raise alarms. Then forensic testing was ordered on the concrete slab where the ring had been found. What they uncovered beneath that surface wasn't visible to the naked eye, but under magnification, it told a story no one was prepared for. Lauren was about to take the stand. She had lived with this story for 10 years. She believed she controlled it. What she didn't know was that the truth had finally found its voice. And once she swore to tell the whole truth, there would be no way to stop it. So let me ask you, can someone live an ordinary life while standing on top of an extraordinary lie? And if the truth stays buried long enough, does it ever really disappear? Like this video if you feel the tension building. Comment your theory. What do you think the evidence revealed? Subscribe, because in the next part of the story, the investigation uncovers what the concrete tried to hide. The truth doesn't usually announce itself. IT waits, IT hides margins, lab reports, and things people assume don't matter anymore. And for nearly a decade, that's exactly where this one stayed, until the concrete was tested. When forensic specialists revisited the construction slab, they weren't looking for a body. Everyone knew that was impossible. Too much time had passed. Too much concrete had been poured since then. They were looking for anomalies. Under advanced microscopic analysis, the lab identified trace organic fragments embedded deep within the foundation, material inconsistent with normal construction debris, bone fragments, human, too small for DNA extraction, too degraded for identification, but unmistakably real. And for the first time in 10 years, investigators could say something they'd never been able to say before. Daniel Hargrove did not disappear. Something happened to him at that site. The finding alone wasn't enough for criminal charges, but it was enough to justify reopening every detail everyone thought had already been exhausted. That's when investigations shifted, from where Daniel went to who knew the truth all along. Detectives reconstructed Daniel's final 24 hours minute by minute. They reviewed phone logs, gas station cameras, project schedules. One detail stood out immediately. Daniel had returned to construction site late that night. Something Lauren had never mentioned. Cell tower data places phone there just after 11:30 p.m. IT never pinged another tower again. When confronted with this inconsistency, Lauren explained it away. He must have gone back for work, she said. I didn't know. But investigators noticed something else. Lauren's phone also pinged near the site, less than 15 minutes later. When asked about it, she paused, then said the signal must have been wrong. It wasn't. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered financial documents that reframed the entire story. Daniel had flagged irregularities in construction budget weeks before he vanished. Missing funds, inflated invoices, payments that didn't match materials on site. Emails showed Daniel pressing for answers. Someone had responded defensively, someone close. Investigators followed the paper trail. It led back to accounts connected to Lauren. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Money that didn't align with her reported income. Money Daniel had recently discovered, and money he planned to report. Suddenly, the argument at the barbecue took on a different weight. This wasn't about stress. It was about exposure. Then came the voicemail. It had been sitting in an archive folder for years, overlooked because no one knew what to listen for. Daniel had left it for his sister just hours before he disappeared. His voice was calm. Too calm. If I don't call you tomorrow, he said, something went wrong. I'm dealing with it tonight. He never called. When prosecutors introduced a voicemail during pretrial proceedings, the room went silent. This wasn't panic. This was preparation. Daniel knew something was about to happen, and he walked straight into it. Lauren's legal team pushed back hard. They argued the evidence was circumstantial. The bone fragments couldn't be identified. The phone pings proved nothing. And Lauren herself? She never cracked. She attended every hearing composed. Hair neat, hands folded. She looked like someone who had already survived the worst thing imaginable. But investigators noticed a shift, not in her words, in her silences. Questions about finances took longer to answer. Questions about timelines came with visible strain, and when the voicemail was mentioned, her eyes dropped to the table, just for a second, long enough to notice. The wrongful death trial was never meant to prove murder beyond reasonable doubt. It only needed to prove liability. But the stakes had changed. The courtroom filled quickly that Daniel's family sat together. Lauren sat alone. When she was called to testify, she walked to the stand without hesitation. She raised her right hand. She swore to tell the truth. For 10 years, she had lived inside a story she controlled. But courtrooms don't belong to the people who tell stories best. They belong to the people with evidence. Under direct examination, Lauren repeated her familiar narrative. The argument, the walkout, the waiting, then cross-examination began. The prosecutor didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He simply asked questions about the phone records, about the finances, about the voicemail. Lauren answered carefully. Then came one final question, delivered softly, almost gently. "Mrs. Whitfield, when was the last time you saw Daniel alive?" She opened her mouth, stopped, closed it again. The courtroom waited. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the witness stand. And for the first time in 10 years, Lauren hesitated. The judge leaned forward. "Take your time," he said. Lauren looked at the jury, then at Daniel's family, then down at her own hands. And in that moment, everyone in the room felt it. The truth was no longer buried. It was pressing upward. So here's what I want you to think about. If you carried a secret for 10 years, if your entire life was built on silence, what would finally make you speak? Like this, if you feel the pressure closing in. Comment below. Do you think she planned this or panicked? Subscribe, because in the last part of the story, the courtroom hears words no one was prepared for, and once they're spoken, there's no undoing them. The moment Lauren Whitfield hesitated, the air in the courtroom grew heavier. All eyes locked on her. Friends, family, strangers, waiting for the secret that had been buried for a decade. And then she spoke. "I didn't mean for any of it to happen," Lauren whispered, voice trembling but steady. She told the court what no one could have guessed. The argument that night wasn't just about stress, that IT wasn't just about money, IT was about fear. Daniel had discovered her role in siphoning funds from a construction project. Funds she thought she could hide forever. When he confronted her, things spiraled. She said she tried to stop him, tried to make him understand. But in the heat of the moment, she lashed out. A steel bar left at the construction site became the weapon of her panic. 1 strike, 2 strikes. Daniel fell silent. In the chaos, Lauren made a choice no one could predict it. Using her knowledge and access, she concealed Daniel's body beneath the freshly poured concrete foundation. The very foundation the building stood on. The foundation everyone walked over, unaware. For 10 years, she lived with the weight of her secret every single day. School events, birthdays, holidays. She smiled, she moved forward, but the concrete beneath her feet held the truth. A truth that finally broke free. Lauren's eyes filled with tears as she admitted the most haunting part. "I thought I was protecting my family. I thought I could live with this alone. But every smile I gave him, every bedtime story, was a lie built on his silence." The courtroom was silent, except for the soft sobs from Daniel's family. Lauren pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 25 years to life. Daniel Hargrove was officially declared deceased. But as the gavel struck, a new question hung in the air. Could the truth ever really set them free? Was Lauren a cold-blooded killer or a desperate woman crushed by fear? Could this tragedy have been prevented? What would you do if you were in her shoes? Like if this story gripped you from start to finish? Comment your thoughts. Justice served or mercy deserved? Subscribe for more real-life stories that uncover the secrets beneath the surface. Because sometimes the hardest stories are the ones we never want to hear.